I made 4k on each of my Top Step accounts and 1k on each of my Alpha Future accounts trading the Nasdaq on Wednesday the 21st of January. Here's exactly how I did it. Proof is on my Instagram and TikTok as always. Make sure you go check my Instagram story if you want to go see the proof of that. Let's get into why I end up taking this position. Very simply, I was seeing a few things. I was seeing on the 4 hour, we're after reacting off this key area, respecting this breaker block here, clear displacement off it. To me, that's not looking bearish at all to the downside. We end up getting this inverse to the upside. It does sweep this high inside a gap right here, as you can see. For me, I need to see this 15-minute get inverse to the downside, as we had a bit of a trend line here. We could have looked for shorts, but the 4 hour was telling me we were bullish unless we were going to come back down and turn the 4 hour candle bearish again. We obviously didn't end up doing that. When I go to the 1 minute, we ended up opening up here, tapping in this gap, coming down. We end up actually inversing this gap here. So that wasn't the best thing to see. We also inversed the 5 minute down, but the reason I was willing to take this setup is very simply we end up having SMT at these lows right here. So we had SMT to the upside, SMT. Then we ended up inversing with clean momentum here to the upside. As well on the 32nd, we actually went up, tapping 30-second gap, and then displaced back higher again. Now, I was seeing a few things as well. We had this high here we can use as a break-even level. We also had this relative equal high right here we can use. We also had London high up here as a TP level. There was loads of TP levels, but when I go to the 15 minute, we also had this wick inside a gap right here and this unfilled gap right here. And it's also a little price volume imbalance, as you can see. Remember that and watch how price bounces off. I'll draw the box right there, over there. So that's our volume imbalance that I was seeing on NASDAQ. When I go back down to the 1 minute, flying through this recap, we obviously end up inversing with momentum to the upside. I end up entering here, and I'm going to explain how I used and how I played this trade. I covered the 30-second fair value gap, so my stops were a little bit higher. I was quite confident I was pushing up. On most of my positions, I would target this high here. If you know how I trade, take my 1.2R and be done for the day. I also used this line here as my break even. Now, price went up right here, pushed up to the upside with displacement, and came back down into this order block right here. We also had equal lows right there, so I didn't love that. On NASDAQ we didn't, on MNQ we did. I'm journaling this on MNQ, but we didn't on we didn't on proper NASDAQ contracts. When price came back down into, when price came back down this order block right here, flipped and went back bullish, I added to my position. So why did I do that? Because I wanted this to hold and be a protected low in the market. So my fill then ends up being, I'm break even right now. Here's how I played this trade and how you can add your positions. I added and got my fill break even all the way to here. Now, instead of making whatever I was going to make per account, I've now added to my position. I've put my stops at this protected low, and I can look for price to target this high. Now, it does look like quite a small position, but you need to remember, most of my contracts are in down here. I've added here, so now I'm going to make more money if we hit these highs. I use a trailing TP in my trading, and I quite like this volume imbalance as a draw on liquidity to the upside I mentioned. As you can see all the way up here, that was obviously the wick inside a gap right here. When I let price play out, as you can see, when we took out this high, we displaced higher. I pulled in my trailing stop loss, or my trailing TP, to this high right here, where would have been our TP level. Now, what we're doing with that is we're playing with house money now. I have secured not 1.2R because I added in. I secured about 1.5R already in this position from adding in already. We're at this low, we're at this high right here is our new trailing TP level. When I let price play out, we tap back into this gap again and push back to the upside. What did I do when this candle closed here? Clearly bullish to the upside, no bottom or a huge bottom wick, no top wick, show momentum going up, respecting a 1 minute gap. I added to my position again. So I pulled my trailing TP to this low. So I counted this as a protected low. I trailed my TP right here. And as you can see, price obviously ended up pushing back to the upside. And we ended up getting tagged out right there for the trade. It ended up being about 3R. If I show you where I started the position, that was where I left my trailing. I would have made about 1.5R, as I said, if it hit here. Obviously, I made a lot more money because I kept adding in the places I should be adding. I'm not adding because we're just going up. I'm adding because we're putting in these protected lows that I can expect price to go higher with. If I just draw out the position one more time of where I actually entered, and I'm going to show you one more time why I added and where. So this was the trade. It was originally at 2.87R. I obviously end up making just over 4R on this position from what I risked at the start, from being break even and adding in the right areas. As I said, where did I add again? When we tapped into this order block right here. That is where I added right there. I added in my contracts about here because we tapped in the order block, rejected back to the upside, and then I was happy that that was going to be protected low. If price wanted to come back down, to be honest, if it broke this order block, that's completely fine with me. That I would have been break even anyways if we end up breaking this order block. I was wrong about us going to the high, but that's okay. That's why we use break even our trading. Then obviously this high here, we can look for a reversal. I was waiting to see how the next candle was going to go open. We displaced higher. There's no reason for me to take myself out at that point. Put my trailing in. Happy with that. Again, add in here when price goes back up. And then obviously letting price play out to my final draw on liquidity. And as you can see, that volume imbalance ended up actually being a key area we rejected off. As you can see right there. And obviously we went back and I think we filled the NWAG, or nearly did, as that was the final draw on liquidity for the day in my opinion. That is how you make good money trading, by adding to your position at the right times. Yes, you can set a hard stop or a hard TP at this high. You would have probably missed out on a little bit because we displaced through it. I always trail my positions. That's how I like to get myself and take myself out, unless it's the final draw on liquidity. For example, I had a hard TP at this high here because it was my final draw on liquidity. Minute that got took, I was happy to get myself out ASAP as it's my final draw. This was only my first draw on liquidity. Well, this was for break even, second draw, third draw, fourth draw. Make sense? Any questions, let me know. Mentorship and all that is on Instagram. DM me there. And that's all. Any questions, as I've said, let me know. And until next time, peace out.